George had just gotten home from a long day of work. He was exhausted. He kicked off his shoes, dropped his keys on the table, and collapsed onto the couch. He didn't feel like cooking. He didn't even feel like getting up. George looked toward the kitchen. Fuck it. He grabbed a chocolate bar, sat back down, turned on the television. He took a few bites, and that was all he needed. His eyes started getting heavy. The TV was still playing in the background. Before long, George passed out on the couch. George suddenly woke up. He sat straight up. Another gunshot. Then he heard screaming. People were screaming outside. George looked around the living room. What the fuck? He jumped off the couch and looked out the window. He couldn't see what was happening, but he could hear people running and screaming in the distance. More gunshots echoed through the neighborhood. George grabbed the remote and turned on the TV. There was no picture, just static. He changed the channel. Static. Another channel. Static. Every channel was the same. George grabbed his phone. No reception. He tried calling someone. Nothing. He looked at the top of his phone again. No service. What the hell is going on? Then, George remembered the radio sitting on the shelf. He picked it up and turned it on. Static. He turned the dial. Suddenly, a voice came through.
This is an emergency broadcast. Please remain inside your home. Do not attempt to travel. Emergency personnel are responding to an ongoing situation.
George stared at the radio. He changed stations. The same message. He changed it again. Same message. Every station was broadcasting the emergency alert. George slowly lowered the radio. Then he heard something. A strange sound coming from the hallway. George froze. He listened. It sounded like someone was moaning in pain. George slowly stood up. Hello? No answer. Just another low moan. George walked toward the hallway. He stopped at the doorway. He didn't want to open it, but the sound was coming from the other side. George slowly reached for the handle. He opened the door and froze. Someone was lying on the floor. There was blood everywhere. Something was crouched over them. George couldn't understand what he was seeing at first. Then, the thing lifted its head. Its face was covered in blood. It looked almost human, but there was something horribly wrong with it. It was tearing into the person on the floor. George stumbled backward. Oh my God. The creature stopped. It slowly turned towards George. For a second, they just stared at each other. Then it charged. Fuck! George slammed the door shut. The creature hit the other side. George locked the door. Another impact. The door shook. Stay the fuck away from me! Then, George turned around. One of his windows had shattered. A figure climbed through. Then another window shattered. Another one came through. George backed away. No. More of them were coming. Through the windows, through the doors. They were surrounding him. George looked around desperately for somewhere to go. There was nowhere. The creatures slowly moved toward him. He backed into the corner. His breathing became faster. They were getting closer, closer, closer. George closed his eyes. One of them lunged toward him. George woke up. He then shot upright on the couch. His heart was pounding. He was breathing heavily. For a few seconds, he didn't know where he was. And he looked around. His living room, his TV, his couch. Everything was normal. George wiped the sweat from his forehead. He took a deep breath. Jesus Christ. He looked at the television. It was still playing normally. No emergency broadcast, no gunshots, no screaming. George looked down at the coffee table. His half-eaten chocolate bar was still sitting there. He picked it up and stared at it. All that from a fucking chocolate bar? George shook his head and laughed. It had just been a nightmare. Nothing more. But for a few minutes, it had felt completely real. Tyler was 24 years old, and he was having a really shitty night. A few hours earlier, his girlfriend Aaliyah had broken up with him. Tyler didn't take it well. Instead of going home and dealing with it, he went out drinking. One drink turned into two. Two turned into five. By the time he finally got home, he could barely keep his eyes open. He walked into his bedroom, kicked off his shoes, and collapsed onto his bed. He didn't even bother changing clothes. Within minutes, Tyler was completely passed out, and then he started dreaming. Tyler opened his eyes. He was standing inside a nightclub. Neon lights covered the walls. Music was blasting. People were dancing all around him. Tyler looked down at himself. He wasn't drunk anymore. In fact, he felt great. Then he saw her. She was standing near the bar, blonde hair with red highlights. She looked directly at Tyler, then she smiled. She walked over. "Hey." Tyler smiled back. "Hey. I'm Violet." "Tyler." Violet looked him up and down. "You want to get out of here?" Tyler raised an eyebrow. "Where?" She pointed toward a hallway. "There's a private room." Tyler hesitated for a second. Then he smiled. "Sure." A few minutes later, they were alone. The music from the nightclub was muffled behind the door. Violet moved closer to Tyler. One thing led to another, and before long, they were kissing. Tyler couldn't believe his luck. After everything he'd been going through with Aaliyah, this felt like the perfect escape. Violet climbed into his lap and looked directly into his eyes. Then she asked something that immediately made Tyler uncomfortable. "Am I better than Aaliyah?" Tyler smirked, then his expression changed. "Wait." He stared at her. "How the hell do you know Aaliyah's name?" Violet's smile disappeared. "Why does it fucking matter?" Tyler gave an awkward laugh. "I guess it doesn't." Violet stared at him. "Say it." "Say what?" "Say I'm better than Aaliyah." Tyler's smile faded. "Violet, say it." "Look, I don't know what's going on, but I think I'm gonna go." Tyler tried to stand. Violet grabbed him. "You're not leaving." "Let go of me." Violet's face changed. Her eyes became cold. Then she pulled out a knife. Tyler barely had time to react. She stabbed him. Tyler screamed. He stumbled backward, grabbing his side. "What the fuck?" Violet stared at him. She looked almost disappointed. "That's not what I wanted." Tyler fell against the wall. Violet slowly stood up. Her smile disappeared. Her skin became pale. Her eyes turned completely black. The red highlights in her hair seemed to become darker. Tyler stared at her in terror. "What are you?" Violet smiled. Her teeth looked sharp. "You really should have stayed with Aaliyah." Tyler backed away. Violet's body began to twist and change. Her face became distorted. Her voice dropped into something deep and unnatural. "You always want something better." Tyler closed his eyes. He screamed, and suddenly, Tyler woke up. He shot straight up in bed. He was breathing heavily, his heart pounding. He looked around his bedroom. Everything was normal. No nightclub, no Violet, no knife. Tyler touched his side. Nothing. He was fine. He sat there for a moment, trying to catch his breath. Then he looked at his phone. Aaliyah's name was still in his contacts. Tyler stared at it. After everything that happened in his dream, something about it stuck with him. Maybe chasing something new wasn't what he needed. Maybe he had walked away from something that was worth fighting for. Tyler picked up his phone. He stared at Aaliyah's name. Then he whispered, "Maybe I should call her." And for the first time that night, Tyler wasn't thinking about drinking. He was thinking about fixing what he'd broken. Lucy had just gotten home from a long night at work. She was exhausted. She kicked off her shoes, grabbed something to drink, and collapsed onto the couch. Tomorrow night was supposed to be fun. She and her best friend Julia were going to a house party together. Lucy turned on the TV and started watching an episode of Dead Files on the Travel Channel. She barely made it halfway through the episode. Her eyes got heavy. Before long, Lucy was asleep, and she started dreaming. It was the next night. Lucy was getting ready for the party when there was a knock at the door. It was Julia. "Hey, bitch." Lucy smiled. "Finally." Julia walked inside, but something seemed different about her. Lucy couldn't quite put her finger on it. Julia looked around. "All right, let's get you ready." Lucy laughed. "I'm already getting ready." Julia opened Lucy's closet. She started pulling clothes off the hangers. "You need to wear something hotter than this." Lucy laughed. "What are you doing?" "You've got to look fuckable tonight." Lucy stared at her. "Okay, that's a little much." Julia rolled her eyes. "Come on, there are going to be guys everywhere." Lucy picked out something a little more conservative. Julia looked at her. "You've got to be kidding me." "What?" "You're such a prude bitch." Lucy shook her head. "Whatever." She laughed it off, but something about Julia's behavior bothered her. It just wasn't like her. They eventually left for the party. On the way there, they did something they normally did together. They passed Julia's weed pen back and forth. By the time they arrived, Lucy had mostly forgotten about the weird behavior. They pulled up to the house and could already hear the music from outside. The place was packed. People were standing on the front porch, drinking and talking. They walked inside and started greeting their friends. Music was blasting through the house. People were drinking, laughing, dancing, and hanging out in almost every room. For a while, everything felt normal. Then Julia spotted someone. "Lucy." "What?" "Look." Julia pointed across the room. A guy was standing with a group of people near the kitchen. "That's Dean." Lucy looked over. Dean was pretty good looking. "Okay. Go talk to him." Lucy laughed. "No." "Why not?" "Because I don't want to." Julia rolled her eyes. "Come on. I'm here to hang out with you guys." Julia kept badgering her. Eventually, Lucy sighed. "Fine, I'll talk to him so you'll shut up." Lucy walked over. "Hey." Dean turned around. "Hey." They started talking, and surprisingly, Dean was pretty laid back. There was no awkward pressure. They talked for a few minutes while people moved around them and music played in the background. Then Dean looked at her. "You want to go upstairs?" Lucy immediately knew what he meant. She shook her head. "No, I'm not that kind of girl. Sorry." Dean shrugged. "All right." He smiled casually. "No worries." Then he walked away to get another drink. Lucy actually respected that. No argument, no pressure. She decided to step outside for some fresh air. Lucy walked out onto the porch. The music was still loud inside, but it was quieter outside. She took a deep breath. A few seconds later, the front door opened. Julia walked outside. "What the fuck was that?" Lucy turned around. "What?" "Dean. What about him?" "You had the chance to fuck the hottest guy at the party and you blew it." Lucy stared at her. "That's not why I'm here." "What does that mean?" "I'm here to have fun with our friends." Julia shook her head. "This is your fucking problem." Lucy frowned. "What is?" "You don't want to live a little." Lucy didn't say anything. Julia continued. "You're boring as fuck." Lucy finally snapped. "You know what? Go fuck yourself." Lucy turned around and tried to walk back inside, then she heard something. Lucy stopped. She slowly turned around. Julia was holding the gun. Lucy's entire body froze. "What are you gonna do with that?" Julia stared at her. Her expression was completely emotionless. "I'm putting you out of your misery." Lucy's eyes widened. "Julia." A gunshot echoed through the night. Lucy felt a sudden, crushing pain in her chest. She looked down. Blood. She stumbled backward. Her legs gave out. She hit the ground. Everything around her started getting blurry. The sounds of the party faded away. She could barely breathe. Julia stood over her. Lucy tried to speak, but nothing came out. Her vision went dark. And then, Lucy woke up. She shot upright on the couch. She was breathing heavily. Her heart was pounding. She looked around the living room. The television was still on. Dead Files was still playing. Lucy stared at the screen. "What the fuck?" She looked around. She was home. The entire thing had been a dream, but it had felt so real. Lucy grabbed her phone. She opened her messages. She found Julia's name. She started typing. "I just had the weirdest fucking nightmare about you." She told Julia what happened. Then she asked, "Am I really a prude?" A few seconds later, Julia responded, "What? No, you're not a prude at all." Then another message came through. "I love you exactly the way you are, and I'd never fucking do anything like that to you." Lucy stared at the messages. She smiled. Maybe the dream wasn't really about Julia. Maybe it was just her brain taking everything she knew about her best friend and turning it into the worst possible nightmare. Lucy leaned back against the couch. She looked at the TV and quietly said, "Okay, that was fucking weird."